But we are going to move along to the next topic. Now, as we know, the new school year is back in full swing, and this means mums, and to their credit, some dads in SUVs are screeching around suburbia as they bolt to keep up with the Joneses of extracurricular activities. So cue the overbooked child, the child whose spare time is filled with sports practice, tutoring sessions and music lessons. And that's when they're not at after-school care until 6 p.m. It comes as critical literacy and numeracy skills of Australian students are languishing, and against a backdrop of increasing parental resistance to homework. Now, the graphic you're seeing now shows a decade-long downward spiral in all three major subjects. That's according to data from the Program for International Student Assessment. And it's easy to blame the NAPLAN tests or that teachers are not good enough, or perhaps the government's not funding enough. But how much do parents contribute to this problem? In one 2018 study, almost 90% of school students took part in out-of-school activities, up to 5 times a week, and more than half did more than one activity on a single night. Added in the mix is the fact that anxiety disorders in Australian children are also on the rise, with little free time to simply be still. They're morphing into mini-me's of their stress-addled parents. Now, I don't think enough value is being placed on real, honest family connection, and that's one that doesn't have an alarm or a calendar note attached to it. And let's not forget that children having free, unstructured time to play is a good thing. It allows them to be creative, to be mindful, or heck, even just be bored. Now, Cindy, I'm keen to hear your perspective on this as both a mother and a medical practitioner.
Well, I think it's just finding that balance, isn't it, between being sort of a tiger mother who is a helicopter or over-involved, and someone who is, you know, verging on neglectful or negligent, or just allows that doing nothing and being bored to be a default position just because they couldn't be bothered making the effort. You just got to find that right balance. And I think it varies depending on the individual child as well as the family. Like, different families have different capacities, and different kids have different inclinations to do a lot of activities. So what for one child would be really fantastic and stimulating, and they absolutely love all those activities, another child might find that really kind of oppressive or just too much. So I think it's just finding that balance and accepting that each child is different.
Anybody else have any views on the declining numeracy and literacy skills? That, for me, is the real worry. And do you think it's whether I can draw that connection between children being overbooked and not spending enough time at home studying?
No, I don't think so. Because, I mean, I think doing extracurricular activities, depending on what they are, I mean, they stimulate the child, like, say, whether it's dancing or music or sport. I mean, these are ways of developing their intelligence and their thinking and coping. I mean, these are all just different types of education. And some kids might not be good at the so-called book learning, but their strengths might be in those other areas. So why not give them an opportunity to develop themselves and develop confidence and competence in other areas? I think it's a good thing.
And I think that a lot of the literacy and numeracy issues, which I do see as an issue, because I've seen the decline even with my kids at school, should really be addressed during the school time. It shouldn't always be the extracurricular stuff. And I know extracurricular work that my son, who's 9, who's in grade 4 this year, he's a very bright child and he wants to do a lot of things all the time. And the literacy and the numeracy side at school is not being pushed enough, and so we have to pay for extracurricular days. So he'll often do like a Gateways program, which is on the same day as a school. It's in another location because it's not being addressed in the school for some reason. And as I said, I see the decline from my older 2 when they were at school, comparing again to the olden days when I was at school. Just the change and how it's gone down and how it's gone to more of that student-led teaching now. I mean, I certainly know that in Queensland, for example, instead of doing the Bachelor of Education, they do the Bachelor of Learning Management. So instead of teachers teaching at children, they're helping to manage their learning. It's all the constructivist type of program with how they're teaching the children. I don't see that it's been a success. We look at the NAPLAN results as well, and once again, going back to my own anecdotal experience with my child, his NAPLAN results were off the scale, and he's bright, but he's not a genius. And he said that the exams were too easy.
Well, Karina, I feel with this issue, everyone kind of passes the buck. The school isn't teaching them enough. Parents aren't reading to them enough. The government isn't funding enough. What do you think here?
Well, there's no doubt that literacy and numeracy is declining in Australia. Compared to Singapore, Australian students are a year behind, more than a year behind when it comes to literacy, 3 years behind when it comes to maths. The reality is that governments, all tiers of government, keep pouring more and more money into education, but we're not seeing outcomes for it. And, you know, in terms of literacy and numeracy declining standards, since 2003, as more money has been poured into education, those standards have been consistently declining. The reality is that in Australia today, we have inquiry-based learning, and that means that learning is student-led, motivated by them. It's driven by their own curiosity and questioning in a subject. And that's all well and good to encourage students to be curious about things and to be inspired in their learning. But if we're waiting for kids to be inspired about spelling and algebra, we're going to be waiting a long time. So it is a matter of not just putting that focus on inquiry-based learning, which in 2018 the OECD said directly correlated with the decline in science, Australia's focus on inquiry-based learning, and have direct instruction, you know, as well as focusing on encouraging students to be motivated in that space.
I think there's a problem with judging literacy and numeracy skills purely on NAPLAN. A lot of people don't agree with NAPLAN as necessarily being the be-all and end-all and representative of what the kids are learning. And I think the thing is that, you know, there are so many other things that kids are learning. For example, you know, with the advent of, you know, people being more aware of child abuse and things like that. I mean, I went through my whole school and high school, university career without anybody ever telling me what my kindergartner told, my youngest told me when he was in kindergarten. I said, you know, what did you learn at school? Thinking he was going to say, you know, spelling or something like that. And he said, I learned that nobody can touch my private part. And I think, you know, they're trying to teach kids a whole lot of other things that we didn't learn.
Certainly that's what I'm hearing from teachers. So once a year I have an extended family picnic with all of my relatives, and a whole bunch of them are teachers. They live all over Sydney and they teach at private schools and public schools in Western Sydney and the North and single-sex school. And what I hear resoundingly, overwhelmingly from all of them is that they're asked to do so many other things other than numeracy, literacy and the basic things, which are probably needed in a response to thing. But they're often getting pushback from parents of, why aren't my kids, I don't have time to do this project, because we've got piano, we've got this. So there's pressure from parents, and there's pressure to do more and to cram more into the curriculum, to tick all of those boxes, whether it be, now we're teaching ethics and now we're teaching...
Well, I think education has changed. We've got a lot more options. I mean, even if you think about the number of subjects that kids get to choose from, whether it's in, you know, high school, the HSC, and I think that overall is a good thing.
But is it when our basic numeracy and literacy are declining?
Exactly.
I'm not sure it is.
Yes, and I think you're absolutely right. You know, in your editorial, you pointed out that parents are cramming in so much into the lives of, you know, kids today, after school activity after after school activity. It's not only stressful often for students, but also for the parents themselves, having to drive around multiple kids, remember where they're supposed to go, make sure they're into their sports, and keeping up with the Joneses and making sure kid is doing ballet and swimming and all of that. And it may not be what the child actually wants. I know there's sort of a view today that in order to have a well-rounded kid, you need to make sure that they're learning one instrument and doing one sport outside of school.
I think that's where you do need to tailor it according to the child, and you need to tailor it according to the family, because I mean, different things suit different individuals and different children. I don't think it's for us to judge the Joneses or for the Joneses to judge us. I think we need to focus on what is our family situation, what is the dynamic, and what is that individual child interested in, and just keep checking in with them, because I guess what they were interested in before isn't necessarily what they're interested in now. And I guess you do have to find that balance between having aspirations and hopes for your child and thinking you know best, and I guess getting the feedback from them and making sure that they're still happy with that.
That's right.